Welcome to Adoption Matters, where our adoptee-centered, trispective approach honors every voice in the adoption constellation and helps families grow stronger together. Today, we are joined by Simon Benn from Thriving Adoptees, and we will be leaning into a powerful truth: we are not our trauma. Simon Benn is a prominent figure in the adoption community. He's known for his work as the founder of Thriving Adoptees. He was adopted at just 5 weeks old and has since dedicated his life to helping others heal from adoption trauma. Simon's journey began when he discovered a teddy bear that he had as a child was actually a gift from his birth mother. This triggered feelings of rejection and anger. This experience led him on a profound healing journey, during which he interviewed over 500 people in the adoption world to share his insights and support for those facing similar challenges. He hosts a podcast that aims to inspire and empower adoptees and adoptive parents, focusing on themes of healing, resilience, and compassion. We are super excited to have you here, Simon. Together, we're going to unpack a topic that touches so many in the adoption world: trauma, but from a new and life-giving perspective. So take a breath, everyone, be fully present, and join us as we reframe what is possible. We're going to start the conversation off with a poem that Simon wrote, which is a heartfelt piece that reflects the truth that we are not defined by our trauma. So let's take a moment to listen deeply as he sets the tone for our conversation.
Well, thank you, Kim. And I'm excited too. I would say super excited, but that sounds just a little bit too American for me. So I'll just be excited and stiff upper lip, kind of British and slightly reserved. But here we are. We're going to take it. We're going to start with this poem, right? So it's still in the storm. Trauma's storm rages. Wind howls anguish. Rain, torrents, tears. Thunder roars anger. Lightning strikes fear. But in the eye of the storm, stillness reigns supreme. Silence deafens. Peace persists. And the eye of the storm is the I that is me. The storm spins, but I do not spin with it. I feel the wind's gusts, but do not fly away. The storm surrounds, but it does not touch the calm that I am. I was here before the storm. I will be here after it. Even in the middle, I am untouched, unwounded, and still. For I and I are peace.
Oh, that was beautiful, Simon. I and I.
Yes. I tuned in specifically at that moment too, to that piece. That was really moving, Simon. Phew, can you tell us a little bit about the parts of your story today that you feel most comfortable sharing?
Sure. You've alluded to it in the intro, and so yeah, I'm 58 now, and as you said, I was adopted at 5 weeks old, and told just before I was 2. Apparently, I don't remember that, but we were on the way back to the adoption council. It was in those days, rather than an agency. In Liverpool, which is about 80 miles from where I live. So I live in Yorkshire. I live near York, which is lots of people come to visit York. Not as many as go to London, right? But it's 200 miles north of London, and York is a Roman. It was a Roman city. It was a Viking city, so it's kind of quite famous. It's got a great big minster. So I've lived around this part of the world for my 58 years, and growing up, I knew that I was adopted. I wasn't conscious of any trauma at the time, but looking back now, I can see some stuff and question: was this some anger, some fighting? Is this just boy stuff, or is this adoptee trauma stuff? Who knows, right? I don't. I don't know. And there's a piece there with not knowing. But yes, as you said, I found out at the age of 40 that the teddy bear that I'd had forever was from my birth mum. And telling somebody about that caused these thoughts to come to mind that I'd never thought before, right? That she didn't love me enough to keep me was the essence. There were some swear words as well, but I won't go into that on the family show. And the lady that I was speaking to, who was like a coachy counselor type person, said, "Look, I don't think it was like that, Simon." And I saw the truth. I saw the truth in her words, and so the volcano that had erupted of anger, it just stopped erupting. But I say maybe there was a little bit of white smoke coming out the top of the volcano. Around that time, I'd finally had a good year running the part of the family business that I'd taken over, and that didn't bring me happiness. And I thought, well, maybe adoption has kind of messed me up. But my radar was right. So where am I going to find happiness? Where am I going to find this stuff? And that's the journey that I've been on for the last 18 years, and sharing what I've learned for the last 13, 14 years. And in the adoption space, particularly just in the last 4.5 years. Yeah. A little bit later, so it was 18 years ago, I had this moment of anger towards my birth mother, anger that I'd never felt before. And I'm conscious, obviously, Kim, you're a birth mom, right? The most important part of the story really was about 10 years, roughly 10 years after that moment of anger towards my birth mum, I had a meltdown in a therapy session, which restarted my search for my birth mum. And I got my adoption file eventually, and I found out that so in there was a letter from my birth mum to the adoption social worker, and it became incredibly clear to me reading that letter that the teddy bear was a symbol of her love.
That touches me really, really deeply, especially as a birth mom who left a letter for her son and was not delivered. The letter was never given to him. And that kind of erupted some of those same feels when I found that out.
Yeah. Do you want me to read you the letter, if I can find it?
Oh, that would be great.
As he's looking for that letter, I just have to say that so many things came to in my thinking, like the transition, how easy it is for me personally as an adoptee to think, oh, they didn't care about me. Why couldn't she keep me? Why if she didn't love me, I must be unlovable. And these people I'm with now probably don't love me either. So there was a lack of trust across the board, which is fairly common, I think, sometimes.
Which is why I love the trispective view, right? Because we're always bringing those missing details, which do matter.
So
Simon,
I got the letter, right? So this is dated on. It's got a date stamp of 9th of February 1967, and that's like just a week or so after I was placed. So the lady in the adoption council in Liverpool was called Mrs. Bellis, and the letters on this really cutesy kind of letter heading, home. In those days, middle class people in Britain had headed notepaper with their own address on it, right? Some of them had. Right? So she was still living at home. Was Pat, my birth mum, and so she writes to dear Mrs. Bellis, dear Mrs. Bellis. Mrs. Bellis is a social worker, right? So your letter was for your son, Kim. This was a letter to the social worker. Dear Mrs. Bowes, thank you for everything concerning last Friday. So that's the day that she took me to the adoption council and I met my adoptive mum and dad.
Okay.
I was going to buy a teddy for David, right? So that was before I was Simon, I was David, in Liverpool on Friday. But because we met a lot of traffic, I didn't have time. I thought that the parents wouldn't mind if he had a little something from me, and that was upset, and was upset when I didn't get him one. Right? Please, do you think it would be possible to buy him a little one, a little teddy bear, for you to send on to him? I don't know whether this is highly irregular or not, but I would like him to have a little something from me. Also, thinking that I was giving him a teddy and didn't do so makes me awful sad when I see teddies on display, as I did in Lewis's, that's like a department store, like Macy's, right, on Saturday. Please, may I send you one to give him? Sorry to trouble you. Yours faithfully, Patricia J. Flower.
That is so
Right.
sweet.
So as I read that, and I still get the goosebumps, whatever that was,
So-
reading that letter again.
Okay.
10 years on after getting that letter. So I basically, the tears just cascaded down my face reading that letter as I felt I felt her pain. I felt the power imbalance, right? She was begging. She's begging this woman to get to ask, and she has to ask the woman to ask my parents, right? So the woman might say, the social worker might say, no, I'm going to ask the parents. My parents might say no, you know. So I felt I felt a love for me. I felt the power imbalance. I felt the desperation, and I felt how wrong I'd been in 10, 20 seconds of anger towards her. That's all I'd had, 20 seconds of anger towards maybe. But I actually felt connected with her in that moment. That was the really profound thing. So, you know, when people say we're not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're one spiritual being having whatever it is, billion human experiences. I had the actual experience of that reading the letter. I thought I was just connecting to her, but I wasn't just connected to her. I was connecting to everybody.
It's so important to have all those emotions, isn't it? I mean, you felt, but you had to feel that anger in some point or some form in order to grow and realize the difference between the joy you were going to experience, the anger that you had before, somewhere in the middle of Simon. You know what I mean? It's like you live in a myriad of emotions, and it's important to reflect basically on those emotions as you mature.
Yeah.
Simon, do you think by pulling all of those pieces together, that's when you shifted into recognizing that we are not our psychology and we are not our trauma?
I would say it came later. I would say it's been, I'm giving you two milestone events that make sense. When I share other milestone events that made a lot of sense for me at the time, they don't land like those two events do, because they're so universal.
Yes.
Teddy bears, and it's so innocent, isn't it? It's so.
So we are not our trauma. We are not our psychology. When we spoke the other day, you had a wonderful visual for that. And I do see how, like Kim, that's where my mind was going too. Like, it just shows what we're thinking and feeling. Still, we have ourselves underneath, but I think it'd be great for listeners and viewers to hear and see that visual, because I think that's kind of a powerful thing to come up with.
Was it the rock, paper, scissors?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So, kids game, rock, paper, scissors, right? So it's a metaphor. We have to have metaphors, because otherwise we're just talking about feelings and that it doesn't land. We can't. We can only get our heads around objects. Like we say that grasp. We use the word grasp as in a physical thing. I can grasp. I can grasp that rock, right? Or I can grasp. Grasp the paper. I can grasp the scissors. But we use grasp as in understand as well. And so this is all to do with the power of metaphor. And so metaphors make the invisible visible. That's what they do. They make the abstract concrete, and then our minds can get their heads around them. However, that can sometimes they can make things too concrete, right? And we thingify it. We thingify it, and it becomes a thing. And what the psychologists call this confirmation bias, right? So the primal wound, right? So think about the primal wound and then kind of put that to one side for a minute and just think of rock, paper, scissors. So the rock is us, right? It's the truth of who we are, right? So I'm holding my clenched fist up to the screen if you're listening to this, right? What Nancy Verrier is saying, or Nancy Verrier's metaphor is a wound. So how do we, what can cut? What can cut? A knife or a pair of scissors, right? So, but it's rock, paper, scissors. So what we're saying here is that the cut is made by scissors. However, we know that in the rock, paper, scissors game, rock beats scissors. So the scissors in this are not a good part of this metaphor, an accurate part of this metaphor that fits in with the game, right? The trauma isn't a pair of scissors, but in my view, the trauma is the paper. The trauma is the paper, right? Because the paper wins in the game. The paper covers rock, paper wraps rock, and paper wins in if we're playing this as kids or even as adults, right? It wins until we unfold the paper, and we distance the paper, which is our trauma, and the fist, the rock, which is us. So what I'm saying here is that trauma conceals who we are. It doesn't wound who we are. It doesn't cut who we are. It doesn't harm what we are. Trauma hides us. It doesn't harm us. That's what I'm.
Trauma hides us. It doesn't harm us. It's a very poignant statement.
But it's really important that it's clear what we're talking about by the us. So, because it's not just me that's saying this. It's only me that's saying it in the adoption space, I think, and it's only me that's connected it to what other people are saying. So there's a guy called Richard Schwartz is a professor. He's the founder of a therapy modality that he called IFS, and he describes that as a psycho-spiritual model. A psycho-spiritual model. And the rock, paper, scissors is also a metaphor for a psycho-spiritual model. By Dick Schwartz refers to an uppercase S self. That corresponds to the rock. That's the unwounded self because it's unwoundable. So some people would call this, he would call it the uppercase S self. Other people would call it consciousness. Other people would call it awareness. Some people might call it God. Some people might call it, if you're in the East, you might call it chi or life force. It's the the essence of who we are. Some people might call it spirit as well, right? Spiritual, psycho-spiritual. So all the trauma is in our psychology, and that's the paper in the rock paper. Again, the rock paper metaphor, but the spirit is the rock. So it's the uppercase S self that is unharmed. It's hidden by the trauma, not harmed by it.
That's powerful. And how do you feel the shift makes it makes a difference from an adoptee's point of view?
Well, first off, it gives us some breathing space between us and our trauma.
As so elegantly explained a moment ago.
And we are disidentifying from our trauma. And we are no longer engulfed by our trauma. Right? I saw part of this, part of some stuff that I saw recently. I saw an advocate, and this person is an adoptee, and they're also an adoptive parent. And they put a post up on social media, and it said, "I am trauma." And I thought, well, I'm not. And I don't think anybody is their trauma. And this trauma-bound identity, to give you another metaphor. So I don't know, you remember Houdini? Harry Houdini, the escapologist, right? The escapologist. They used to put him in a straitjacket. To put you a straitjacket and then chain him up and put a padlock on that, right? Well, that's the trauma-bound identity. So we need some keys here.
Yes.
We need
and
some
what do you
keys.
Those keys, especially for adoptive parents and birth parents, as we make that shift. So about the trispective view, as we talk about that, can you segue into a little bit about how holding that view helps everyone?
For everybody. This is the trauma-bound identity. Like Peter Levine, so he's another trauma guy. I don't know if you've come across him. He says that trauma is a fact of life, but it's not a life sentence. So, think of a life sentence, right? Where are we locked? We're incarcerated. We're in jail. I watch a lot of American TV shows like Blue Bloods. So we're at Rikers Island off Manhattan, I think, is where they often send the crims from Blue Bloods. So what we need is we need to see the so it's a fact of life, but it's not a life sentence. So we need keys to open the door of the cell at Rikers Island, or Armley Prison, which is a prison in Leeds, right? If anybody's listening from the north of England, it's near Leeds, right in the middle of Leeds. And we need keys. We need keys we need keys to unlock the trauma-bound identity. So one of the facts is that all of us it's a fact of life, Peter Levine says, right? So, and pretty much everybody's got it. The freedom is from disidentifying from it. And the keys, the key is insights. Now insights, it sounds like a kind of a heady thing, right? My moment of reading this letter, right, that was more like an epiphany. It was like a really deep It was a really deep emotional thing. I'm working on at the moment. As I think we need a non-religious word. Like epiphany is a bit of a religious word. Some people are put off by that, right? But it's like instead of an insight, it's an infelt. That's the best I've got to come up with anymore.
yes.
So it's an emotional insight. So
Mhm.
we need to see where our beliefs are wrong. So I've done some therapy, but I've had a lot more coaching than I've had therapy, right? And I know you guys,
Yes.
Coach Kim, right? So one of the things in most coaching is busting limiting beliefs, right? Busting, but for some reason in the adoption space, nobody talks about beliefs. But where was I? Where was I for those 10 seconds of finding out about the teddy bear? The belief was she didn't love me enough to keep me. Now, the lady that I was with, instead of validating my belief, she questioned it. She questioned my belief. And because my belief was a new belief, I'd literally just only said the words. It probably wasn't a belief, it was more like a thought, right? Because it was new, it came from nowhere and it went away from nowhere. And then 10 years later, I had the same I had a kind of a reverse belief when I see that this teddy bear was a symbol of a love. It wasn't that she didn't love me enough to keep me. She loved me enough to give me a name. She loved me enough to give me this teddy bear, and she was thinking of me, and so it's all about insights.
I was gonna say too, for like adoptive parents, we can help with that key, or we can be ones who try to throw away the key in terms of how we relate and what we do with our kids. I just was thinking of that, like, yeah, we need to validate feelings, and if our kids don't have a lot of information, for instance, we might want to go look for some information that could challenge some of those beliefs, for instance, or um, just being open to seeing that our children are not their trauma too, because sometimes we can get sort of wrapped up in that and also wrapped up in our own. And so it's like this balancing act. I want my kids to feel and know that I hear them and I believe their experiences. And I also want to be able to um, leave room and separate a little bit. So it's kind of it's a balancing act. It's tricky. But parents, even being aware of this, might shift for adoptive parents how they are towards their kids, that they view their kids as capable of their own life and their own life story, which is coaching right there. That's why we love coaching in the adoption realm, because coaching at its core is capability. It doesn't ignore stuff, but it certainly has a core belief that people are whole and complete and capable. So, adoptive parents, let's all start thinking about this. We can't talk about everything today, but it can be a start to start thinking about how can we shift our mindset too, to help with that key, to help with the insight.
Yeah, we can't shift our mindset. Our mindset gets shifted for us, right? This is one of the challenges with the word mindset, I think, right? I kept on following the breadcrumbs, and my insight was laid out for me. I didn't make that insight happen. I didn't decide one day, you know what I'm going to do? I've got this belief that my birth mother didn't love me enough to keep me. I really need to challenge that thing. That's not how these insights work. We have to be we have to be putting our space. I don't know if I told you about this before. I talk about hanging out at the bus stop for insights. And listeners, you are already doing that. You're listening to a podcast. Hopefully, I would say I agree with everything that you said, Sally, and I would add two things. We all need to be looking at our beliefs, right? And we need to be looking for our own insights. And I would also say that there's a little mini case study for a conversation with a kid.
And yet,
Like, I heard this guy Simon
yeah,
on the and this is what kind of happened to him, and you third party it.
you can third party, and there are, I have loved ones where there will never be a letter.
Yeah.
There's never going to be a picture.
Mhm.
There's a thumbprint. There's just the information, very little information. I think that's where it becomes even more challenging, because then there's not, that's where, how can we make a shift that doesn't invalidate what's been decided? I think by the person, I think that one client I had, and I know we're getting close to the end here, but we went on a factual mission to look at what was happening at the time in their home country. What were the rates of this or that, and what does it mean that the birth mom took the child to the hospital when the birth mom could have maybe done something else? And the person started saying, well, that means that there was some care taken. There was a decision made because that hospital was a certain distance from where they learned that the family had maybe lived. And so then we pieced together this thing, and then because the belief was, who would throw away, that was the belief from this person, who would throw away their child? It would be someone who doesn't love them. And so we said, well, let's take a look at these things. And so it was grounded in some concrete societal things, and also sort of like a map we kind of pieced it down, because I think that's a challenge when somebody doesn't really have that information and may never get it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think vulnerability, sharing our own stories about, like, a lot of people have been bullied. That's an entry point into this thing. Like, we believe something, and then we realize it wasn't true. So parents' vulnerability about their own shifts in belief and how they happened, and showing stories that show when we were afraid to be wrong.
Powerful point there. Boy, Simon, there's so much we could go on about, but before we close, we'd love for you to share a little bit about your upcoming project and book and the impact that you hope to make through its contents.
Sure. So can you just remind me when this is going out, this
It'll
pod?
be after your book is completed.
Okay. So at the moment, and so by the time this goes live, you'll be able to get a copy of this book, right? So it's called Thrive, and it's a free ebook all about what adopted parents need to know and do to help their kids thrive, but it's crowdsourced. So what's the word you use? The tripart? Trispective, right? So this book is sourced from the trispective. So we've got input from adopted parents, we've got input from adoptees, and input from birth mothers, in terms of it's not what I think adoptive parents need to know and do, it's what the collective feels that adoptive parents need to know and do to help their kids thrive. And it's free. And so if you go to thrivingadoptees.com, it will be there.
What a beautiful offering. Thank you so much, Simon, for sharing your story and that powerful poem with us today. It's a beautiful reminder that our trauma does not define us, and that healing and growth are always possible. As we close, I encourage you to explore Simon's work at Thriving Adoptees for more insights from his inspiring perspective. And here at Growing Intentional Families Together, we represent every voice in the adoption triad: adoptees, birth parents, and adoptive parents. And we lead with an adoptive, attuned, trispective approach. Our coaching supports the whole family and helps you navigate your unique journey with compassion, understanding, and respect. Visit our website to learn more about how we can walk alongside you as you grow and heal together. You can check us out at giftfamilyservices.com. And we hope that you'll join us again next time for some more real heartfelt conversations that explore adoption from all three perspectives and bring you deeper understanding and connection. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Simon. This is awesome.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, all of you. It's been a delight.